Thank you for joining us at the Roundtable.
Brought to you by Community Education Arts, a nonprofit organization based in Noblesville, Indiana.
I'm Alice Cavanis-Gober, president of CEArts.
And I'm Sarah E. Morin, secretary of CEArts. Let's sit down
at the Roundtable.
Welcome back to our Creative Placemaking series. This time we're going to help you define your project and its end product.
Yes. I wanted to make a quick note and just say if at any time in this series we use the word artists, that term usually for us includes all kinds of arts creators of any kind, whether amateur or professional, musicians, writers, poetry and prose, fine artists, all mediums, photographers, crafters, artisans, etc. So if you're creative, you're an artist. That's our opinion. We live it. We love it.
Right.
So, and sometimes I forget to list out all the different kinds of artists that you can possibly have. Cake decorators are artists. People who seamstresses are costume designers. Hello, Oscars. That kind of thing. So I just dated when this happened. When this was recorded. I'm gonna have to edit that out. No, I might leave it. I don't know. Anyway, so I just want to make that clear that when we're talking about creative placemaking and we talk about artists, that includes a huge amount of creative people. So, yes.
All right. So for defining your product, for each of these categories we're going to talk about in just a second, we're going to identify the target audience. So artists, art supporters, businesses, adults, families with young children, teens, young adults, millennials, locals, tourists, picking who those are. So your local target audience for the project in terms of who are the participants. So for example, to put this on our personal level, for NICE, which is Noblesville Interdisciplinary Creativity Expo.
That's our classic literature-based project, which we'll talk more about in another podcast, another video. Yeah.
For that one, the participants are writers, artists, musicians, all those artists we just mentioned.
Cake makers.
Right.
Hat makers, whatever. Yeah.
But they have to be at least 16, so anywhere 16 up.
Right.
For the Polk Street Review, which, do we have the book to show again?
Yes. Oh, video people get to see the book. Podcast people, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
For the Polk Street Review, which is the book, again, it's all those creatives that we just mentioned, the artists, again, ages 16 or above. And so we provide a call out to local arts partners for help promoting our product.
We do that for NICE too. I just didn't have it in my notes very obviously. But I think, and we had talked about how important arts partners are in previous episodes. So if you haven't watched those, please go back and watch the previous episodes about that, because it is so important to have arts partners in your community. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And then think through support. So for example, for NICE, we've had donations, we've had grants. Thank you, Indiana Humanities.
Yes, we had a grant from the Indiana Humanities 2
I think
years
so.
ago? Yeah, I think so.
And then for the Polk Street Review, again, donations, grants, Indiana Arts Commission.
Thank you, Indiana Arts Commission. Yes, we wouldn't be doing this without you. So thank you, Indiana Arts Commission.
Local business patrons, local arts organizations, and we have a local arts council.
Yes.
And then think through who are your end users. So for NICE, the end product that we have are a series of workshops and also a one-night finale, which we call our expo event, where people who were leaders of the workshops, people who participated in the project, they can present their thoughts. They can also have created a project inspired by the books that we've been talking about for months.
Yeah, part of what we encourage but don't demand is that people can create new artwork inspired by the classic literature pieces that we select each year. So we select 4 each year, and then we ask people to come and talk about them and get all hot and bothered by them. Yeah, get all excited.
And so part of it is the people, again, who are presenting, but anybody is welcome to come as an audience
They're
member.
all public events. All of our events are public, So.
Right. And then the end products for the Polk Street Review, we have done workshops in the past. This podcast and video series.
Yes.
The book.
Let's hold it up. Yeah. Shameless plug. The 2020 edition of the Polk Street Review.
We also do a book launch event, and I could go on and on about how wonderful that is, right? To have that writing community join together. So the end users are people who are buying the book, people who have written in the book or done art, people who are attending just to be part of this book launch, and a global audience, because we send this out online and some of our contributors
Social
find
media,
us.
Yep, we're all over the place.
Right, absolutely.
So what you want to also look for when you're defining your project is what project, based on your research, and we talked about research last time, do you feel best fits your community's arts interest? Now, last time we talked about how my family moved to Noblesville in the 1970s. If someone had said, come up with a creative placemaking project for Noblesville that's arts related in the 1970s, I would have said, huh? Because first of all, I wouldn't have known what creative placemaking meant. That's a buzzword these days. I don't think it existed back then. And there really wasn't an arts community in Noblesville at the time. It was, art class at the high school maybe for students, but but we feel like our two creative placemaking projects, Nice and the Polk Street Review, they both fit really well with our community's arts interest because they both have some focus on Noblesville. They're also global, but they do focus on Noblesville itself. And that means we're focusing on local artists, local businesses, local history, local personal memoirs, etc., etc., etc. It's all very local, family friendly, close community themed, our project. So if you feel like you have a community that would work for, then it would behoove you to try to come up with an arts project that is very specific to your community. Now, some of the creative placemaking examples that we talked about last time had a more expanded vision. And maybe your arts project is going to have a more expanded vision. It's going to be based on your research, though. It's not. We're not here to tell you should do a book. You should do an expo. It's not like that. You should do a statue in the middle of the square. Right. I mean, you have to look at your community and figure out what works for based on the research that you did.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And your project then leads to your end.
Right.
Product.
Yeah, and tying right into that, what is going to best engage your community? And what we found is that offering kind of a buffet of opportunities within a single project has worked the best. So again, it might be a workshop for those people who like to be in that more small, intimate, let's build off each other, get our creative juices going in a discussion and educational kind of setting. But also digital.
Oh yeah.
Especially for some of our followers who are far away.
It's amazing what email has done, because people can send things in digitally, and on our website, you can go to our website, CEArts.org, and find our online arts showcase page, and see that people will send us poems, they'll send us writings, images, even some songs and things, and these come from all over, and we can put them on our website, and they were seen all over. So that's pretty cool. I also wanted to say, because you talked about workshops, and one of the things we learned doing workshops is that not everybody who comes to a workshop actually wants to create something in the workshop.
True.
Some of them want to come and absorb everything, but they want to go home and do their creating.
Right.
And oftentimes in our workshops, we brought art supplies and stuff, and we expect people to just start creating their wonderful things. And it's like, people are like, I'm not going to do that, So the multi-layered aspects of your project will help you come up with your ideas for things like workshops, digital content. Some people just love to go live on Facebook, or Twitter, or Instagram. You'll find what you want to do, and then the main events kind of thing, the main product, which
So our main events tend to have more people. They tend to have a little bit more energy, I think, and they tend to be more formal.
Right.
So but yeah, there's pros and cons to all of them, and it's fun having all those types.
Right, and having those events, whether it's a workshop type event or digital content event or social media or main events like exhibits or book launches or expos or whatever, all of those not only help your project become identifiable, but they create multi-opportunities for community engagement. because there will be people at those events who come up to you and want more information, or they want you to come and speak somewhere and tell others what you're doing, which is really kind of the inspiration for starting a podcast like this and having a creative placemaking series. People started asking us a lot, how'd you do this? You know, you guys have done these projects for years. How'd you come up with this? I'm like, well, let me tell you, you know. So that kind of leads to what I was going to say next is you have to think about your start to finish engagement, and I mean your engagement, and the support you need from your community. Because let me tell you, one person alone cannot, lift, build, support a creative placemaking project forever and ever and ever. You have to have a team, like we're a team, and you have to also have support from your community. So you got to think about, and almost like itemize in list form, if you will, the support you'll need for your entire project to produce the end product. So you're going to need to look at financial support, participation from who? From artists, probably, because we're talking about arts projects, marketing support, promotional engagement, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. This would be a very long podcast session if we listed everything you need to think about from the start of identifying your project to the end product that you produce. But depending on your project choice, safe to say, these considerations take a lot of planning, money, and time. So scheduling and promoting things in a timely fashion is really important. Things like workshops, you may have to seek out some workshop leaders. We did that when we had the Indiana Humanities Grant for NICE. We actually had some university professors come in and talk about the 4 pieces of literature that we had chosen, and that was wonderful.
That was so fun.
Yeah, it was great because it was, we got to hear what, other people, professional people in academia were thinking about these books that we'd chosen. It was like, new thoughts, new ideas. But, you have to communicate with these people and let them know what your workshop dates are and stuff like that. You have to find financial sponsors. You could knock on somebody's business door. Hello, would you like to give money to my project? And they'll say, sure, here's a check. That's never happened, for us. No one ever says yes that fast. So it's a time thing and it's an effort thing. You have to put the time and energy in. And then you have to have promotional material. Your promotional materials, I can't talk, have to be finalized months ahead of time. If you have a workshop in August, you need to be promoting that now, February, January, beginning of the year. You need to have your arts partners and your promotional partners have that media, your promotional materials, whether it's a banner for Facebook or a image that has the dates and stuff on it and the costs and all that, if there's a cost. You have to give that to your arts partners who are helping you promote, because they probably have print deadlines that are months in advance. I guarantee you they do. So yes. That is a hard lesson we've learned over the years, because when it's a small organization like ours, basically the 2 of us brainstorming and coming up with ideas, and I say, oh, well, I'll make an image for that book, and you say, to put that out, and it's like, our arts partners are like, well, okay, but that print went out 3 months ago to the printer, so it's not going to be in. Oh, I missed the deadline. Right. So find out the deadlines for your arts partners and your promotional help. Find out what their deadlines are, and you're going to have to put a timeline budget, if you will, in your project so you know what you're doing. And that's going to be true for any type of event you have. I love it when people say they're going to have a pop-up something. I'm like, okay, a pop-up something is great, but who's going to know to come? It's like, so I'm saying any event, workshop, podcast, book launch, exhibit, whatever, you need to have your promo materials ready months ahead of time, usually, especially for print deadlines. Now, that sounds kind of scary, but you can be thinking today about a project, an end project that will become fulfilled next year or later in the year. You don't have to be afraid. You have all the time in the world to make your creative placemaking project perfect.
Right. And something else that we've kind of learned is that when we have to meet those print deadlines, they don't need to know every detail of what's happening in the workshop.
Exactly.
They need a blurb.
Yes.
That gives us time to flesh it out as long as we have that blurb is still going to be accurate.
Yes. For example, we describe the Polkstreet Review as a submissions-driven anthology celebrating Noblesville. Now, that tells people right away that we accept submissions, right?
Yep.
That's really all they need to know.
Yep.
You know, they can then, you know, if that's what goes to print, then a month later they'll be like, hey, there it is again. Oh, the deadline's December 31st every year. Easy peasy, right? I mean, that's one thing we decided with our Polkstreet Review is that the deadline was never going to change. We have an annual deadline. It's a no-brainer. If you want to submit to the Polkstreet Review, just send us something before December 31st. That's easy, right?
Yep. That's right.
Not everything is that easy, you know, but that was kind of an easy one. So
right. So speaking of, like we were earlier, the promoting, the marketing it in the community, some examples we have for the Polkstreet Review. Each year we do sell the books online, but we order extras, and it isn't just that we want to, that we like over order or something.
Oh God, no, we don't have money for that, you know.
We order extras on purpose, so when we go to our poetry conference, our arts related conferences, we'll have them to sell.
Yes.
We also like to give several away. That builds interest in what we're doing. It just helps us get our voice out there. Examples are at Spring Fling and the Fall Rendezvous for the Poetry Society of Indiana. We've always taken those.
And we've always had a few sales there too.
Right. And we've gotten contributors that way.
Yes, we have. We've gotten a lot of people to send new submitters.
Right.
Another thing that I think is interesting and good to do is every once in a while, not always, because you know it is like giving away money, but you can give away a copy of a book or something of your end product if it's a physical thing. You know, you could give it away for a fundraising cause, a different charity, a different 501c3, a gift basket kind of thing when people are collecting items to go in a gift basket for some raffle or something somewhere. I mean, you know, you can work those into your budget and say, okay, this copy of this book, for example, is going to go to this good cause, and that's a good thing.
Right. Right.
Yep.
We also each year go door to door to the local shops in downtown Noblesville and ask, hey, would you like to stock, 10, 15 of these copies of the Polkstreet Review? Maybe 2 or 3 businesses will agree to sell the books on spec. And one arts organization that we are partnered with, they might buy 10 to 15 copies outright for their 2 gift shops they have in town.
And I know they sold out of our last year's copy, so
Nice.
So let's talk a little bit about pre-existing possibilities of pre-existing project. You know, I'm gonna edit that out. You do this.
Oh, sure. Hey, let's talk about possibilities for a pre-existing project or idea, which is something another person or group used to produce, something already in your community's history. So a prime example is
the Polkstreet Review. Again, how we got the Polkstreet Review is kind of an interesting story because the year let's see, I'm trying to think, was it 2014 or 15? I can't remember.
One of those.
When I created the 501c3 that was originally called Logan Street Sanctuary, now is Community Education Arts. I think I filed the paperwork in November and we were approved in February. So 2014, 2015, something like that. And we had both contributed to the Polkstreet Review before this. And interestingly enough, the Polkstreet Review was a project that was started by a couple of friends of ours, a couple local authors, Bill Kinley and Kurt Meyer. And they had produced this book for 4 years, I think, because it started in 2011.
3 or 4, I can't remember
years,
exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember either. And then the year that we had the 501c3 for the first time, the first year we had it, you know, I don't know if you submitted, I did, showed up to the book launch and there was no book because they had no time to put a book together because both of them had just published their first novels. And so everybody showed up for the book launch. There were no books, and basically they had people present some pieces that they had submitted, but everybody was like, but there's no book. You know, it was a great night of presentations, but there was nothing to go home with. And, you know, I talked to them about it, and I was like, well, you know, this project is pretty perfect for my brand new 501c3, you know, and I asked them if they would consider letting us take over the project. And they were just like, yes, please, because they love the project. It's a wonderful thing, but they just couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
And I was dumb enough to say, we can do it, you know. I think they thought I was crazy, but, you know. But so they had started it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the way they had some things and how we've kind of changed it and it's grown, because originally they had images in the book, but that wasn't something that was like really advertised to submit those. I think they just had certain friends would, you know, give them things or something. But there was like the rule of either the submitter or the subject matter had to have a connection to Noblesville, was like the main guideline. I can't remember what their other guidelines were. I think they had some word count limitations or things like that for longer pieces. It's been so long, I don't remember. Sorry, Bill and Kurt. But when we took it over, we wanted to try to honor what they had started, and it was a pretty beloved annual publication.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So we kept that Noblesville focused theme, if you will, overall kind of guideline, where either what you're writing about or you have to have a connection to Noblesville. That's getting harder and harder because of our global presence, if you will. And so I think this might be the last edition that was in the call out. I'm gonna work on rewording the call out a little bit, because I think I still want it to be Noblesville focused. But I think we also want to shine Noblesville's light further, you know. And so I don't want to take time in our recording to talk about that, but that's something that's been a little bit hard to stick to. It also confuses people. They think they have to talk about Noblesville and whatever they write. And I'm like, not really, but okay. And then we did change a few things. We added a few things. We added awards. Well, first of all, we added categories.
Right.
Our 3 categories. Prose is one, poetry and song lyrics is one, and images. So we have 3 categories, and we have awards. They're just ribbons, but they're lovely. People love to get ribbon awards. And then we have like an overall award of merit, which is our best in book, if you will. And then we usually end up giving 1 or 2 special awards, which are a little hard to define, but they're kind of fun too. So we changed that, and then we've added also a theme. I don't know that they always had a theme when they were publishing it.
Not that I remember.
I mean, a couple times I remember having a prompt, but it was very, I don't know if it was, you know, a hard and fast thing every year. What we've done, the first couple times we had a theme, we kind of demanded people use the theme. And then we kind of were like, well, that's kind of hard too, because some people love a prompt and some people don't. And so I think where we're headed with it now is we have a theme each year. We've instituted a theme contest, which this is the first year that we had a theme contest, and the winning theme was Sunrise, submitted by our wonderful friend Deborah Peterson, who will be on our podcast as our guest very soon.
Yay.
And just that idea of sunrise and all the literal and metaphorical things it could be just seemed perfect for us this year. So we have a theme, and I think our rule for the theme is, if you've submitted and been published with us before, you do not have to meet the theme. If you're a first-time submitter, please try to meet the theme. And I have to say, this year was great. So many wonderful sunrise submissions from both past people who've been published with us and brand new people. It's just wonderful. Yeah. So I like that. I like it when we have an idea and it really works.
Right. I think it resonated with people.
Yeah, it did. And so I think that's about the big changes that the book has gone through.
Sure.
Well, other than being published by a 501c3, that's pretty huge. You know, I mean, those 2 guys, bless their hearts, they just published it. You know, so but anyway, so.
Sure.
I wanted you, Sarah E., to talk a little bit about how we came up with NICE.
Sure.
Because I love our story of NICE.
So NICE, again, Noblesville Interdisciplinary Creativity Expo. So I had asked to borrow a painting of Alice's because we had collaborated. The poem and the painting went hand in hand. And I was returning.
She
it
wrote
to
the
her.
poem. I had a painting. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so I was returning it to her at a coffee shop, and she said to me, you know, I would just love to get some sort of event to revitalize interest in those like classics, you know, classic books that, you know, we used to read, you know, when we were kids, but
or were forced to read.
Or
in
were
class,
forced to read.
yeah.
Yes, for you and I, we were happy to
we
read
loved
them.
reading, but a lot of people didn't like to read. Yeah.
Right. But basically a way to kind of reconnect, to reinterpret those works. And she's like, let's do an event. And I said, okay.
No, that's actually backwards. You said, let's do it. And I was like, okay. You know, I think I said something like, wouldn't it be cool if there was some kind of event where we could like collaborate with dead authors, you know, 'cause, you know, classic literature, you think they're all dead. No, they're not really, but we both love books. We love the classics. We have a lot of favorites in common, and we butt heads against some other ones, and you know, but we love talking about them, and we get inspired by them, and that's the thing, you know. Our collaboration started with, you know, I would paint a painting, you wrote a poem, you wrote a poem, I'd paint a painting based on your poem. It was like we were collaborating.
Right.
It was, putting that together with our love of books, it just seemed like endless possibilities of being able to host some sort of event, and you were like, let's do it, and I was like, okay. That's how Nice was born. And in 2020, we're in our 6th year. So I kind of think of Nice as kind of being our love letter to literature. Yes. And so again, for people who already are bibliophiles, you know, what can you as a creative person create based on either the entire book or a quote from the book? Yeah, we always pick passages. We do 4 books, a passage from each one. The passages we pick, we try to pick ones that stand alone, so that you don't have to go back and read the whole Brothers Karamazov or whatever, you know.
Pages, yes.
Yeah, you know. So we try to make it easy but fun.
Right.
And when we have other guest lecturers come in, guest workshop leaders come in and bring whole new perspectives and thought processes into their experience of that passage or that book, that selection, it's amazing.
Right.
It's so much fun.
And I think that you and I also get really tickled when there's somebody who's like, oh, I hate that book. I had to read that in high school. It was just torture.
And we're like, please give it another look.
Right.
Try again. Come to the workshop. You know.
Right.
And then they're sold.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you're talking about, you know, what is a new way to look at that? How is it relevant in today's community to you personally, you know, person who is trying to get
your
to this
experiences.
piece.
Yeah, and that's really important to me personally because technically, formally, whatever, I'm a trained anthropologist. I used to teach anthropology at university, and you know, so I'm always looking at, you know, when I read a piece of classic literature, I'm thinking about how does that relate to our world. I mean, I see it through the lens of that anthropological lens of looking at, you know, how our cultural experiences speak to that book, and that book speaks, you know, how is it relevant today, kind of a thing, and that's very important to me. So I love our Nice event. Now we're getting probably running past our time for this episode, but coming up next, on our next episode, we will have an in-depth look at community education arts' creative placemaking projects, the Polk Street Review, and Nice. You may think you know everything because we've talked about them, but you don't. So we're going to have a couple episodes that give us a little more in-depth look at the Polk Street Review publication and the Nice event project, and we will hopefully have a guest with us.
Yes.
To help us talk about those as a participant experience for her. And so I think
that's all. So thank you for listening.
Yes, thanks for sticking with us again, and we'll talk to you next time at the round table.
This has been At the Round Table with Alice
And Sarah E.
of Community Education Arts.
Our nonprofit organization is based in Noblesville, Indiana. You can find us online at CEArts.org.
This activity made possible in part with support from the Indiana Arts Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency.
We'd like to thank James Weston for writing our intro music and for his technical savvy.
Join us next time
At the Round Table.